A group called the NCCM, the National Council of Canadian Muslims, has released nearly 100 pages of recommendations for all levels of government, and indeed much of non-governmental society, that would transform Canada into an anti-Islamophobia state, giving it more political and police tools than even a country like, say, Pakistan would, to hunt down anything judged to be critical of Islam. That's my worry. The group, NCCM, formerly was called CARECAN, the Canadian branch of CARE, Council of American Islamic Relations, a group that a U.S. judge once said was linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. Justin Trudeau was asked about these policy recommendations by the NCCM. He was asked if he would adopt them. I'm not sure if he's actually read them, but he said he will move forward on them. Here's what he said today.
There is much we need to do, and I know the National Council of Muslim Canadians have put forward a list of recommendations that we're going to be talking about later this week, and we're going to move forward on.
Now, it's always good to be skeptical of Trudeau's promises. I mean, he promised that his top priority was getting Indian reserves in Canada clean drinking water 6 years into his term, and he hasn't done so. So that's a bit of a relief. I also remember that Trudeau said he would implement all the policies recommended in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for First Nations. Of course, he hasn't done that either, but by giving his moral approval of them, he allows others within government and society to proceed. I want to take you through some of the most dangerous ideas in the NCCM's policy book to show you how radical they are, to show you what anti-Islamophobia means today, and to show you what Trudeau has said he supports. I'm just going to pull about a dozen of them at random. They want the government to, quote, commit to introducing a social media regulator with a special focus on ensuring that civil liberties are protected. What? Either you're regulating social media or you're protecting civil liberties. You can't do both. But I know what the NCCM means. They want Stephen Guilbeault to regulate the internet and to kill freedom of speech, or what's left of it. I'll read some more. The NCCM demands an investigation into whether national security agencies have unduly deprioritized the study of white supremacist groups. Specifically, such a study could point towards disparities in resources and funding having been put towards surveilling Indigenous, Black, and Muslim communities, in contrast to white supremacist groups in Canada. There's a bit of a theme in the NCCM document. What they like is censorship of critical views, and what they hate are all the instruments of the state that guard against terrorism. It's quite something. The NCCM, you might actually be forgiven for thinking they want to reduce our scrutiny of terrorism and replace it with a new boogeyman, as if we haven't had a spate of Islamic-motivated terrorism in this country, including in Parliament itself. Let me give you an example. They want to establish dedicated prosecutorial units for prosecuting hate-motivated crimes. And what they mean by that is anyone who hates Islam. I have some friends who hate Islam. They're Muslim. Will they be prosecuted? And this is my point. If there is discrimination against a Muslim person, if a Muslim person is assaulted, whether it's because they're Muslim or just assaulted as a regular crime, we've all got to stand against that. We've all got to be against that. But if the crime that's being invented here is someone who's skeptical of Islam or critical of Islam, then we're not protecting individuals anymore. Now we're protecting an ideology. And hate, of course, is a human emotion. Hate itself can never be a crime. And what I'm worried about here is that the NCCM and Justin Trudeau and his Justice Minister and the rest of his cabinet want to move away from our Canadian tradition of being skeptical and being allowed to criticize any and all religions, to protecting one particular religion, and also to prosecute its critics. We'll keep reading. Remove the requirement for Attorney General's consent. The Attorney General's consent is currently required to begin any prosecution for the willful promotion of hatred and genocide. This is a uniquely high bar that should be abolished. The same should go for any future freestanding provisions around hate-motivated crimes. I said that emotions should never be criminalized, but of course our criminal code does criminalize promoting hatred against an identifiable group. Now I say again, I'm against promoting hatred against an identifiable group. I don't like that in our criminal code. I think emotions should not be legislated. Actions should be. But at least that criminal code provision requires the Attorney General to review the case and personally approve the prosecution. That's not much of a limiting force, but it does mean that no individual prosecutor or cop can go around laying charges for such an extreme political offenses. It recognizes that prosecuting someone for feelings or hate crimes is inherently political, and so it makes the government of the day own that prosecution. The NCCM obviously wants more prosecutions, and they think that they can find some cops or some prosecutors to do it much more casually than the Justice Minister, and I think they're right. And I'm worried that Trudeau says he's going to move on these issues. I'll keep reading. The potential introduction of a public interest-based defamation fund for Canadians who were smeared on the basis of hate. What? Defamation, I'm familiar with it because, of course, we give and we receive it here at Rebel News in the courts. Defamation is a civil suit where if there's someone who has said something really mean about you, you can hire a lawyer, go to court, and protect your reputation. If you win, you'll get money. If you lose, you'll have to pay the other side. The NCCM obviously wants to go around hunting their enemies, but they either don't think they can find a lawyer to do it on contingency, or they don't think they can crowdfund it, or they basically want you and me to pay lawyers to hunt down any of their enemies. I've never seen anything so bizarre in my life. This next one here, they use the word CVE, that stands for Countering Violent Extremism, but look what they mean by that. Until there is a coherent set of policies enshrined to prevent the profiling and mass surveillance of our communities, pause the mandated Countering Violent Extremism programs at the federal level and require Public Safety Canada to develop out a new program in consultation with racialized communities for broader public safety. Boy, that's a lot of words saying stop looking for terrorists. Just shut it all down till we can figure out what's up. Does that really promote Muslims? Does that really serve the interests of ordinary Muslims in the Canadian community? Or is that a very specific rocket fired at our counterterrorism police? It's a very strange thing to bundle up in anti-Islamophobia. If you're afraid of terrorists, you're afraid of terrorists, whether they're Sikh or Tamil or Muslim. But here the NCCM says it's Islamophobic to be tracking and hunting for terrorists. I don't think that's right. So surveil your enemies. They want the entire social media regulated. They want the ability to prosecute and sue in civil court ordinary Canadians, but they want the surveillance of possible terrorists nipped in the bud. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.